Madam Clerk, 13A.
Consideration of city input to the State Board of Education on 2022 model policies on the privacy, dignity, and respect for all students and parents in Virginia public schools.
Okay, as I think everyone is undoubtedly aware, there is the governor's state board. Well, the Virginia Department of Education, on behalf of the governor, has proposed a revision to the model policies that were promulgated under Governor Northam, related to full inclusion for all of our students in our schools, and those policies are now out for comment. And our school board has already released a statement regarding their policies, reiterating their policies for how they are going to continue to enforce the policies that they put in place in alignment with the model policies that were promulgated by Governor Northam's administration. That being said, I think there was a desire to provide city input during this comment period right now. And so we have a draft that our staff, in consultation with a number of citizen groups and commissions, have put together for our consideration. And so that's before us tonight. Councilman McPike.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I would like to thank the LGBTQ task force for bringing this issue before us, and the mayor and the city manager for giving us the important opportunity to discuss this topic. Though how our school policies are shaped in response to the new policy of the governor will be determined by our school board, in whom I have every confidence, this is a matter that cuts to the heart of who we are as a community, and thus it is appropriate for the council to weigh in. We know that there are many trans students in Virginia schools, including here in Alexandria. They deserve to have their schools be a place of safety and acceptance. I want them to know that their local elected leaders are on their side. We have your back and we'll never stop fighting for you. Governor Youngkin's new policies are nothing less than a direct attack on the trans students in Virginia schools. If enacted, these policies would directly harm the physical and mental health of young trans Virginians and would legalize bullying against trans students and would lead to the forced outing of trans kids. In isolation, each part of his proposed policies would be harmful to trans kids. Taken together, they are devastating. They will cause great stress and mental health harms to a population that is already at greater risk of depression, self-harm, and suicide. There is no ethical or rational justification for these proposed policies, but there is a political one. The governor thinks he will score points with his base, and he clearly considers any harm that will befall trans Virginians to be an acceptable cost. Under his proposed policy, trans kids could be denied access to the bathrooms that conform with their gender identity in violation of Virginia law and federal court decisions. This sort of policy can cause physical harm to children who, unable to use the proper restroom, attempt to go all day without using any restroom, putting themselves at risk of urinary tract infections and other avoidable injuries. His policy would allow teachers and administrators to intentionally call trans students by the wrong name, even if a student has permission from his or her parents to use their new name at school. There is no other situation, none whatsoever, where we would tolerate a teacher intentionally referring to a student by the wrong name. Our governor's giving bigoted school officials a green light to bully vulnerable children, and that is abhorrent. And worst of all, the governor's policy could require schools to out trans students to their parents. As the only member of the council or the school board who has had to go through the harrowing and terrifying process of coming out as gay in my case, let me be clear, no one should ever out anyone. Across our country, LGBTQ youth are significantly more likely to be homeless or to die by suicide than their straight peers. And by far too many of those heartbreaking outcomes, you'll find stories of kids left bereft, alone, and desperate because their families wouldn't accept them for who they are. The determination of when and how to come out to one's parents is a decision that only an LGBTQ person has the right to make for themselves. Outing a student as trans to unaccepting parents is a recipe for tragedy. I know that our school board will be pushing back against this attack by Governor Youngkin on Alexandria's trans students. I know that this council will support our schools in this effort, as will Alexandria's representatives to the General Assembly. The task force The LGBTQ plus task force has asked us to speak as a council on this matter, and I'm glad that we are doing so with this letter. I encourage every Alexandrian who values the lives of our young trans residents to use the public comment period about this proposed policy to speak out in defense of the children the governor has targeted. You have a voice when so many of them do not. So please use it. Please tell the governor that growing up is already hard enough and that policies like the one being proposed would only make it harder for our trans youth. To the LGBTQ young people of Alexandria, particularly our trans students, I know that many of you are afraid of what might happen if your family finds out who you are in a way that you didn't plan. When I came out 20 years ago, my parents did not respond well. I was fortunate to have good friends who stood by me until my mom and dad finally came around. Cling tightly to your friends who know and love and accept you. And know that there are more people than you can imagine out there fighting for you to have the best possible future. Just look at how many young people staged walkouts of their schools yesterday in protest of these policies, or the Alexandria teachers and parents who are working every day to make sure that you thrive in the classroom and beyond. If sometimes it is all still too much to take, know that there are people who can help. You can find links to organizations such as PFLAG, the Trevor Project, and Safe Space Nova, as well as online resources for young LGBTQ people and their families at alexandriava.gov/LGBTQ. Mr. Mayor, I'm sure that other members of the council will have comments, but if it's appropriate for me to do so at this time, I'd like to move to adopt the proposed letter in response to Governor Youngkin's proposed model policy regarding transgender students.
Okay, thank you, Councilman McPike.